Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If there's one individual who's fascinated me the most over the last 5 years, it's Jeff Bezos. He's the founder of Amazon.com, the founder of the space exploration and civilization company Blue Origin, and also the owner of the Washington Post. But what fascinates me most is not that he's been able to build this incredible company, but the time frame in which he's been able to do it. Just 25 years ago, the idea of Amazon was literally just that, an idea, and now he's built it into an incredible $1.6 trillion company. He's the helm, he's the CEO and hands-on director, and today I'm going to take you through the principles that he follows to be able to amass such a vast fortune of personal wealth in the process, but also how you can take those principles and apply them to your business and your life. In order to understand where Jeff Bezos is now, we need to look back at some of his history. Born in 1964 to a mum who was just 17 years old and still in high school at the time, Jeff Bezos was early recognized as a gifted child. He went into a Montessori school and really excelled from an early age. One thing they did mention though was that he had difficulty focusing on anything more than one thing at a time, which has really served him later on in his life. So after excelling during school, except the period where he got kicked out of the library for having that unusual laugh that you may have heard of before, he ended up applying and graduating from Princeton University with a science and electrical engineering degree. After graduating, Jeff had a number of different options coming in from companies like IBM, but he made his way to small investment firms along Wall Street. After a string of different positions in the technology and investment field, he was hired by D.E. Shaw, where he stayed for 4 years. During this time, he found an astonishing fact that the internet was growing at 2,300% year on year. And this number was mind-blowing because he could just see the incredible potential of what the internet could do for commerce. He then made a list of 20 different companies that he would like to start using the power of the internet, and books came out on the top of that list. Now, part of the decision to choose books was because there are more items in the category of books than any other category. The next is music. On July 5th, 1994, with just 4 employees and a $300,000 loan from his parents, Jeff Bezos started Amazon from his garage in Seattle. Now, the choice to settle in Seattle was important for 2 reasons. First of all, because it was recognized as a technical hub, so finding talent was not going to be a problem. The second reason was it was just 400 miles from the country's largest book warehouse distribution center. That's a mouthful, which made it really accessible to be able to get hands on books. And pretty quickly, Amazon started to pick up momentum, but what I love about the story is that Jeff would still take all the packages to the post office in the back of his Chevy pickup truck. And this is so important in your business as well, is developing the idea of self-reliance. And Jeff picked this up from his grandpa. So from the ages of 4 until 16, every summer he would spend with his grandpa on a farm. And they would do various activities from literally building a house to watching his grandpa make the needles to be able to perform his own veterinary work. This attitude of self-reliance is really important because when you know how every single process works inside of your business, you're not vulnerable to other people coming in saying they can do something when really they can't. And more importantly, when something goes wrong, you know within that you will have the tools to be able to diagnose and fix the problems that are at hand. And so Amazon has continually grown, as has Jeff Bezos' wealth in the process. In 1998, which was the first time we got public estimated data about his net wealth, we started at $1.8 billion. As we continue on over the years, even throughout the dot-com bubble where he did actually drop to just $1.2 billion, he then quickly started to amass a greater wealth. In 2017, it was estimated that Jeff Bezos' wealth was $81.5 billion, and in just 1 year, 2018, it was estimated to be worth $160 billion. That's nearly doubling an entire net wealth over a year. In 2019, it dropped to $119 billion due to a divorce with Mackenzie Scott. Even with that process, in 2020, Jeff bounced back to be at a position of $205 billion. And this is just an astounding fact. And so you can see from this the trajectory of income as it continues to grow and as Amazon gets even bigger and bigger. So with this kind of money, does it literally mean Jeff can roll into the bank and just ask to withdraw $205 billion? Not exactly, because most of Jeff's wealth is wrapped up inside of his Amazon.com stocks. And so Jeff currently owns 10.6% of the company. The company's valued at its total, what they call market capitalization, which means if all the shares were put onto a table and one person stacked them all up, it would cost them $1.599 trillion. Part of the reason why Amazon has been able to grow so big is not just because of the principles that they follow, but also because they're really smart at reinvesting their profits back into their own business, but also acquiring other like-minded businesses and bring them under their umbrella. Some examples of this are Audible.com, Diapers.com, IMDb, Zappos.com, and also now Amazon Pharmacy. So how did Amazon.com literally go from a garage in Seattle where the power would literally surge because they were putting all their computers inside of the garage at the time to now becoming one of the most valuable companies on earth? After doing extensive research on Amazon.com and Jeff as a person, we can really boil it down to a set of solid principles that his companies follow. So what I'm going to do is take some of these lessons and help you apply them into your business and your life. The first principle is the day one mentality. You might have heard Jeff say this before. It's always day one. What this means is when you first start your business, you're very nimble and your pivotability and adaptability to be able to solve the customer's problems is at such a high level that no matter what problem they come in with, you're willing to solve it and help them with it. But as you continue to grow, you start to lose that and you start to get certain red tapes, and this is how we do things around here, and that breeds a culture of, well, the customer needs to adapt to us. But when you take on this day one mentality, realizing that any day it can be taken away from you, not from a fear base, but as a motivation point of view of always staying relevant for the customer, you can shift your thinking to make sure that you're always looking to solve new and more exciting problems for the customer. Principle number 2 is to create a culture. Right from the get-go, Jeff was very clear he wanted to create an inventive and innovative culture. What that means is, from an innovative standpoint, is they're always looking for new ways to solve the current customer's problems. And from an inventive point of view, it's looking at things that the customer hasn't even thought of before that will more efficiently solve the current problems that they have. And so not many people know this, but in 2014 in July, Amazon actually launched a smartphone called the Amazon Fire. Yet by August 2015, just 1 year later, they completely discontinued. Why? Because they created what Jeff calls a Me Too business, where they came in and tried to beat someone at their own game. We already had the iPhones, we already had the Androids, and so one thing that Amazon's really clear about is they're not going to be a Me Too business, and that means they have to be really on top of their innovative and inventive game. So asking yourself, am I currently innovating and inventing for my customers, or am I waiting for other people to do it and trying to be a Me Too business? Principle number 3 is speed, agility, and accountability within the management team. Did you know that PowerPoints are banned at Amazon meetings? Did you also know that no teams are bigger than what 2 pizzas could feed? And did you also know, this one's awesome, at an Amazon executives meeting, they will print off the memos and have them there on the table. And so before any meeting starts, they will sit in silence for 20 minutes until every single person has read the memo in full. And I remember when I was working in corporate and I was working around these, what I thought were really professional individuals, and no way would they slack and they'd be reading everything to such minute detail. But it really shows up is you go into meetings and people would say, oh yeah, I browsed over the document. Yeah, I had a quick look around it, but I'll fill in the pieces as we go. What this is translation for is I was too lazy to do the work and everyone else should be punished. And so Amazon had this really great idea that they weren't going to stand for that, and that you had to read the memo in the meeting so no one in that room could say, I haven't read it, or try and bluff their way through. So by having the 2 pizzas rule, it allows the company to have teams that stay nimble. By having the no PowerPoints rule, it stops these boring meetings where no one even listens and half check their phone on the side there. And by having the memos silently read in the meeting, make sure that no one can continue to fly under the radar and bluff their way through what could be very important information. Principle number 4 is to be customer obsessed, not competitor focused. And this was massive for me in 2015. I actually wrote it in permanent texter on my laptop saying, think customers, not competitors. Because in business, you have 2 different pulls. You've got the pull of the competitor trying to pull you back into normality, and then you've got the pull of the customer attempting you to solve newer and bigger problems that currently aren't being met. Now in business, you get to choose which pull you want to feel. Now this doesn't mean that we're never going to pay attention to what our competitors are doing or look at the competitive landscape, but it does mean the main focus is what are the current problems of my customer and how can I solve them on a much more deeper and meaningful level. One activity that you might like to do to get you into this mode is making a list of 10 or 20 of your last customers, and then next to it detail what are their current biggest problems. And if you don't know, it's time to ask. Getting feedback from your customers is such an important part of the process. And if you look at any longer Q&A section that Jeff will do with the audience members, if an audience complains or says how something can be done better, he will ask, hey, can you come grab me at the end of this talk and tell me what we can be doing better? Principle number 5 is long-term thinking. Jeff likes to think in terms of a 5 to 7 year time horizon. And in order to do that, you need to be willing to be misunderstood. One of the things that we tend to do is we look at a big company now and think it's always been that way without recognizing part of the journey that they've been on. And so in 94, Amazon.com was created. 95, it was launched. 97 was when it went onto the stock exchange for the first time. It wasn't until 2001, 7 years after it was created, that they recorded their first profit. And this is the long-term thinking required. And now we can look at Amazon.com and see the insane momentum that they have inside of the marketplace. And we can really attribute this to Jeff's longer-term thinking. There's a foundation called the Long Now Foundation. And what the Long Now Foundation is doing is building a clock in the middle of Texas, in the middle of a mountain, that's gonna keep the time for 10,000 years. Now, this is difficult for a whole bunch of reasons that are far beyond my pay grade, but because the Earth is moving, the sun's slowly getting out of sync over a 10,000 year time period, it's very difficult to have these things match up. But when we start to think about what will these people open in 10,000 years time and think about us as civilization, it's basically akin to us finding the hieroglyphics inside of the tombs inside of Egypt and then thinking, wow, like people are actually going to think about what we were doing back at this stage. And so what this is doing is allowing you to think of problems that can be solved far in the future that are lasting and standing the test of time, doing something meaningful. And so maybe right now you're feeling like you're not having the impact on this world that you could possibly have. By looking at foundations like the Long Now Foundation, you allow yourself to see what others are doing on such a grand scale. They're literally thinking 10 millenniums inside of the future. How can you start to infiltrate that level of thinking into what it is that you're doing? Lastly, Jeff will often end his speeches with one important question, and I want to leave this in your mind as well. In life, there are two choices. You can choose to live a life of ease and comfort or a life of service and adventure. Which are you going to choose? Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button down below. It helps immensely. It only takes just a second. You can do it right now. And also subscribe so you can see more videos just like this. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you again soon.